Welcome, my name is Mark Treadwell and this is the 14th video clip in the series that accompanies the resource entitled Learning, around how the brain learns. And in this session we're looking at intelligence, and we're looking at the notion of intelligence. And intelligence, essentially, how we're defining it through this process, is about how well we apply the learning process to take the prompts and the knowledge and the ideas and concepts, to build concept frameworks and rearrange those creatively in order to be innovative and ingenious across a wide range of different contexts. Learning is remarkably equitable for almost everybody, as long as we keep the amount of front-loaded knowledge to a minimum and add new knowledge as it's required, just in time. When we look at intelligence, it's framed around quite a lot of different domains. For example, it's framed around dimension perception. That's the ability to move and catch a ball and be aware of our own bodily movements and how we perceive those in an instant. So that perception of where we are in space and time through our senses is a form of intelligence, and it varies from person to person. Physical dexterity, likewise, is another intelligence domain, and that's the ability to react quickly, to move intuitively into different spaces and places, to keep our arm up when we're trying to spike a ball or shoot a goal, etc. Another domain of intelligence is around social nuance and body language. The ability to interpret other people's intent, feelings, thinking from the way they react, from their body and their vocal nuance. Okay, so there's two nuances, our body language and also the vocal nuance that accompanies that. That tells us a lot, and once again that is a form of intelligence, and it's a good thing to develop in everybody. Logic, reasoning and risk is another domain of intelligence, and that's just that sequential reasoning process, applying logic and also managing the risk associated with that. Should I jump off this rock into the ocean? Is that safe? Is it deep enough? Etc. Metacognition is another dimension. The ability to think about our own thinking is a very, very powerful domain in terms of a framework of intelligence. And finally, in the sixth, we've got synthesis and creativity. The ability to synthesize knowledge, understanding, ideas into new knowledge, ideas and understandings. Intelligence is not limited to just these six domains. There are three other domains which are a little bit artificial somewhat in their nature. But they're also quite practical given the nature of the learning institutions that we have. And so the additional three are our ability to use our intelligence to extend our conceptual understanding of our world and appreciate the artistry, the scientific principles, the social structures, our health and mathematical understanding of our world and their principles. And those domains are domains that we have artificially boxed into frameworks like that. Okay, so mathematics is an artificial framework because we use maths in science and we use maths in art. But they're useful for containing particular concepts that we would like young people to understand to enable them to actually work well in their world. Our principles and character formation is another somewhat artificial but important aspect of intelligence. And the third one is applying the significance of the competencies, identity, thinking, questioning, etc., which we dealt with in the previous three video clips. So what we end up with in the end is 9 domains of intelligence, and we all have different ratings, so to speak, in each of those. No one person has huge capacity across every single domain. All of us have got a variation in there, and we've all got a unique intelligence profile. But school should not dictate how we feel about that intelligence. And this is where we need to reconfigure the way in which we do school to allow all learners to leave school understanding their intelligence, and that one form of intelligence is equally as valuable and equally to be valued as any other form of intelligence. When we started to look at how the brain learns and rationalise that with intelligence and these 9 domains, what we started to realise was there were essentially 3 factors that affected intelligence for each of those 9 domains. One was the cognition level, the complexity and speed at which we process each of those learning domains. The second one was domain complexity, and once again that's the level of capability we've developed within each of those domains. And we can develop that capability in all those 9 domains if you had enough time on the planet. Okay. Generally speaking, we end up focusing on several of them and doing those really well, and the others are put in as required, just in time, so to speak. So the complexity of each of those is important. The domain range is, if we look at a particular domain, say for example physical dexterity, can I apply that physical dexterity to one particular aspect, one particular sport maybe, or maybe a multitude of different sports? Generally speaking, the domain range is the extent of the contexts we're able to apply our capability across. So if that's in music, for example, we might be able to play multiple instruments or a single instrument. In essence, the smarter we get as we get older, the more concepts we map. The more concepts we map, the more astrocytes that are downloaded from our gyrus in the middle of our brain. As we build levels of astrocytes as we age, so when we're first born, we've mentioned in a previous video that we have very few astrocytes, and when by the time we're in our late 20s, our brain is dominated by astrocytes as we've mapped different concepts within those 9 different domains across those 3 factors: cognition, domain complexity, and domain range. And you can see from the diagrams, what we've done in the diagrams is to place the 9 domains into a schema to sort of vaguely represent what normal intelligence looks like, and that's a distribution of those different domains in different places. So each of those spheres represents one of those domains, those 9 domains. And once again, they overlap at different points. Okay. So sometimes, those 2 things, for example, physical dexterity and dimension perception, definitely overlap. There's no doubt about it. Logic, reasoning and risk definitely overlaps with metacognition. So the domains there is artificial representation, but it's a way of us getting our headspaces around the complexity of intelligence now and what intelligence actually means. So as we get older, what you can expect, I hate to say, is that as you get smarter, you're also going to get more and more what we call senior moments. Times when actually you sort of walk into a room and go, why am I here? Or where you go to greet someone and you go to shake their hand and you think, oh my goodness, I can't even remember this person's name. Okay, that is to be expected, and the smarter you become, expect more of that. Okay, so basically smart people have many more senior moments than not-so-smart people who haven't formed as many concepts. The potential's still there to be smart, but it may not have been realised. The automated processes will kick in. Okay? We automate driving, we automate a whole lot of processes in our life. And when we're busy, we actually don't even think about driving into town. We've just got so many things in our mind. When we get older and we move into retirement, quite often your parents will start actually losing some of that confidence because they start thinking about driving into town. Okay? And so when you're thinking about driving into town, you don't let those astrocytes who have mapped that pattern 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago and automated it. When you start thinking about it and not using that process, that's when you're going to get lost. That's when you think, oh my goodness, I can't even find my way back into town anymore. Well, actually, you've been doing that automatically for a long, long period of time. So confidence as we age, confidence in our ability to continue to learn, and confidence in the concepts we've laid down and automated many, many years ago are important. I want to briefly talk about two groups of people we've been looking at in some detail when it comes to intelligence. And one is savants. Savants are people with an extraordinary eidetic memory. They can remember things in sequence really, really well. Whether it be words, whether it be painting pictures, drawing pictures, whether it actually be music, whatever it might be, they have that extraordinary long sequences of numbers, letters, words, facts, etc. And they're really good at that. The difficulty with savants is that they have very, very few, if any, of the 9 domains conceptually mapped. In other words, for some reason, genetically, they've inherited genetic sequence which doesn't allow those astrocytes to map and automate those processes. There's a downside of that, and that is that almost all the savants need a full-time, permanent caregiver to look after them. Okay, because they're unable to judge a whole lot of complex outcomes of those 9 domains of intelligence. The upside is that they've got far less astrocytes interrogating neural sequences, so their ability to sequence is fantastic. And that's what we see, you know, someone who can remember pi to 50,000 decimal places, that's incredible. It is really extraordinary to see that. I was watching Stephen, he's a savant who has this capacity to fly over a city, then draw that city. And I watched him draw Brisbane once, and it was just extraordinary to watch him draw it. You know, he flew over it for 10 minutes, actually he went up in one of those eye and had a look over the city, and he sat down then and drew it across a 4 or 5 metre piece of paper, and he drew it with incredible accuracy. It was really quite impressive, there's no doubt about it. Another issue that we've been looking at as well is autism. Because autism is quite common in classrooms around the world. Many of us will have 1, 2 or 3 autistic kids to some degree in our class. What autism is, fundamentally, is they're missing just one of those domains. And the one they're missing is the one around social nuance and body language. What this means is that when an autistic person sits at a table with a group of people, they really can't read the body language that's going on unless someone actually states in words specifically how they are feeling. And often we don't do that. You know, so we might have an autistic child join a group of people and expect it to be accepted by them. But often they don't. So people with autism are missing that ability to read body language and social nuance. And as a result, they can't interpret that, and therefore they can't predict how those people are feeling, and therefore they're missing a very, very complex part of our language form. The amount of time that our brain actually gives over to managing body language and social nuance is huge, and some researchers suggest up to 30% of our processing is around that. That's how important it is for our social interaction with each other, you know, to manage that notion of body language and get that right. I'm going to leave intelligence there, but I just want to leave you with the final sort of statement saying that intelligence is incredibly complex. You do not get a number, okay? A B is not a summation of your intelligence, okay? 27% out of 100% is not destined you to actually be unintelligent. Everybody is gifted with various capabilities, and everybody has the capacity to be intelligent, and school should not rob you from the confidence that you are intelligent. So if you had some bad experiences in schools, and many people do in their years at school, don't take it that you're not intelligent. That's not the case. Intelligence is something you work at and build up and have the capacity, and across those 9 different domains there's a huge raft of interpretations of what intelligence is. Thank you for listening to this. Hopefully it's some use. Now you can go back and you can read the resource around intelligence and draw out of that what you will and what you can, and try applying some of that thinking into our classrooms and schools and tertiary institutions around the world. Thank you very much for listening, and all the very best.